everyone who has come along. So Kelly and I are from Swinburne University, and we have a research project that's underway at the moment. That's the title of the project there. So we just wanted to be able to share that project with you today. I'm just going to do a quick acknowledgement of country from where Kelly and I are, although we might actually be in slightly different locations because Kelly's up in the hills in Melbourne. We respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which we may meet, and pay our respects to elders past and present. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Kelly, who's going to talk a bit about our actual project.
Thanks, Anne-Marrie. So yes, we have embarked on a project at Swinburne. I want to say this project is obviously around the context of Gen AI and assessment, but actually when I was thinking more about it today to share with you, I think the question really is around about making decisions and feeling confident within the context of using Gen AI. So as you can see here, the aim of this particular study was for us to understand more if by helping to upskill our unit conveners, at Swinburne University to identify indicators required to assure learning, could they feel more confident to make those decisions to determine that for their assessments, how they're going to use Gen AI for their assessments, and what skills students can offload to Gen AI and which skills and observable behaviours they didn't want that to happen for. So we, as always with these sort of projects, we were madly getting our ethics approval done, going back and forth. This was quite a unique project for Swinburne. So we were really surprised by the enthusiasm for the project. It was only 2 to 3 weeks before semester was going to begin, semester 2, that we were able to put out our reach and email over 500 conveners. Many of them, as you know, at that time are away, having their break. And what was required if they wanted to be involved was to attend one workshop with us and to be able to apply what we were teaching to at least one assessment they were going to use in semester 2. So interestingly, we got 56 conveners that have signed up. So we're going to be doing quite a lot of interviews at the end of this semester to circle back to them to find out how they have use this approach. So if we go to the next slide. Anne-Marrie, are you
Oh,
driving the
sorry. Yes,
slides?
I
No,
am.
that's
I am
fine.
driving. I was just listening so
No.
intently to you, Kelly.
So this was our pitch. Why participate in this research? We wanted to support unit conveners to identify, as I was saying, indicators to assure learning. But really, as I mentioned before, we do have a scale, which is on the next slide, that we use at Swinburne that was introduced in the last 12, 18 months that is similar to the Perkins AI assessment scale that is now in our unit syllabus and our assessment brief. So as you can see with that particular slide, and maybe it's worth we go back into looking at that. The conveners do need to make decisions around these particular levels and what they are comfortable with each of their assessments, and to be able to communicate that very quickly clearly to their students. We're in a central team, so Anne-Marrie and I are in an academic team within the central team at Swinburne, which is called the Education Innovation Exchange. So we do have a guidance around this that we need to socialise, and our task is to help where we can our conveners to understand how to be able to apply this to their units, and we're looking at this beyond at a program level. But what we did find, there was a gap definitely with how conveners were feeling confident to be able to assign what was okay or not okay for their students to be using Gen AI with their assessment. So I'll hand over to Anne-Marrie to share more.
Okay. So one of the things we start off doing in the workshop is just going through with the academics the challenges that we understand that they're facing the same challenges that everyone's facing. So there's a lot of encouragement to use Gen AI, or certainly at Swinburne, there's a lot of encouragement to use Gen AI. It's seen as, offering opportunity, that people may want to become skilled Gen AI users, that, you might want students to have workplace relevant skills. So there's reasons why you might want to use Gen AI, but also there's an awareness. So I've got a little quote there from Peps McRae: whoever does the thinking gets the learning. Nice, simple little statement there. And it's the idea that if the students have engaged with the thinking, they're the ones that are learning. So if we tell the students you can use Gen AI for X, Y, or Z, which is what we're doing when we, give them a pointer on that scale, then they may not be the ones doing the thinking. They may not be the ones doing the learning. So that little diagram on the left, that was a diagram that McRae had put together from a research piece by Bastiani. I haven't shared the slides yet, but I will afterwards, and there'll be actual proper references with the slides when I share them. But that little diagram is just showing, students' performance, generally progressing over time and increasing. And if we introduce Gen AI, it can actually, in the short term, show a huge increase in performance, possibly. But if students are using it as a crutch in the long term, there could actually be a decline in performance. So making that decision about what you offload to Gen AI or what you get your students to do is really crucial for their learning in the long term. So making those decisions is really critical. I'm just going to nip back again to this slide here. What all the unit conveners at the university are asked to do is, in their unit outlines, they have to say to the students, in this assessment or across this whole unit, you may use Gen AI in this way. So the unit conveners are looking at their assessment and saying, okay, because of the learning, you can't use any Gen AI, or actually you can use exploration and stuff like that. But the way in which the unit conveners have come to that decision, we don't really know. We sort of assume it's a bit of a thought, a random guess. And therefore, we kind of felt that if there was a way we could actually make learning very transparent, if we could focus on where the learning actually was, it would help inform a decision about what you want to offload. Or it might inform your decision to say no, absolutely, I'm making the right decision to say no to Gen AI. And that then they would be in a position to communicate that decision to their students, to their peers, to other people who are teaching within the unit, all sorts of people that have a really solid basis, evidence-based, by being able to articulate very clearly what the learning was. So the idea of the upskilling workshops was to give them an approach, a strategy to making that learning transparent, and to unpick, the alignment of their assessment and their unit learning outcomes, to really understand what learning was happening and to help them make the decision and to communicate it really clearly. So the idea, or the basis around this, comes from the idea of learning progress. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Jeff Masters, but Jeff Masters describes the purpose of assessment is to establish where learners are in their learning. And so if we think about that, and we think about, assessment can tell us where a student is in their learning, it tells us what the student needs to do next. Like when we learn, we progress in our learning. We go from lower levels of attainment to high levels of attainment. And by a teacher understanding where a student is, they need to know where they go next. And I know that might sound just incredibly obvious, but it's incredibly important. If we think about learning theory and we think about zone of proximal development, it's actually taking us back to that point, that moment. And therefore, understanding, what our students are learning connects us to learning progress. So the idea that we can articulate the learning, we know what learning we want our students to do, we know what we want to offload. We've connected our assessment to learning, and that's incredibly important. So I suppose the basis for what we were doing was really trying to connect back to learning progress and understanding what the role of assessment is in that, and how the two are connected and why that matters. Now, we have conducted 7 workshops with our 56 participants. The workshops we actually timetable them for about 2 hours, but they tend to last about an hour and 15 minutes. And then people are free to stay on and talk and chat and ask questions or whatever. So we've started to already see some things around what they're saying to us in the workshops. Now, the fact that we've had 56 people rock up to a 2 hour workshop voluntarily, you kind of think, gosh, there's people who really, really want to be able to do this. They really, really want to be able to understand this. So the enthusiasm has been incredible. The enthusiasm at the end of 1 hour and 15 minutes when we've talked through what we want them to do is incredible. One of the first things we really notice is to be able to unpack your learning requires subject expertise. Now, I know, again, I'm really stating the obvious there, but it's incredibly important. If you have subject expertise, you understand the detail of what you're teaching, and then you understand that progression in in a student's learning, and you understand what you're going to teach next. So we can see different levels of subject expertise are underpinning some of the different questions that people ask. People sometimes are getting a bit stressed. They're sharing their personal experiences, their desires to have secure assessments and stuff like that. We actually really talk about, we just want you to put the idea of a secure assessment aside here. You know, that's a kind of another stream, another avenue the university's working out at the moment. We're just thinking about assessments where you're saying to the students, we'd like you to do this, we'd like you to do that. And so some of that real concern and their worry about what's happening with students is coming out. Kelly, do you want to talk about some of the other things we're seeing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that even though our particular research is focusing on the participants were coming with already fully formed ULOs and assessment ideas, not that our research was focusing on the quality, if you like, of the ULOs. What did come out was many realized their ULOs needed work as well. So that's probably maybe not a surprise. I think just having the opportunity to have time with us in this focus time to help with this task of preparing for the assessment did bring up many things. And I think we're looking at one particular aspect, but I think we'll have quite a lot of information around areas that they need more support with after this and recommendations for the future as well, in order to even get to that point to be able to clearly identify how they want to use Gen AI or not with their assessments. So there was, as Anne-Marrie said, probably the other thing is there at times was a lot of positivity and aha moments and feeling that they had something they could really work with, tangible to move forward, but they were also quite anxious about their time and workload to be able to implement what we were suggesting as well. So that will be another thing for us to unpack is around once we've potentially found something that's working very well in this space, is how we can help the conveners be more resourced or have that conversation as well to implement it.
We've talked in terms of the unit conveners looking at one assessment within the unit that they convene. There was such excitement from some, they were going away and intending that it had to be done across the whole course. So when we check in with them at the end of the semester and see how they went with it all, it'll be interesting to see where they went.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap up, we are looking at this as a pilot study. We're considering, where or, what we could do with this in the future. Maybe there'll be opportunity to offer it externally. Maybe there'll be opportunity beyond Swinburne. We're talking with our psychology department of adding a sort of additional part onto this, looking at metacognition. So we can see there's, lots of opportunities within that, even just for people to repeat studies. We're kind of not quite there yet to say, hey, who wants to come on board? But, we can keep you informed through, this through the SIG group. And, we'd really hope it can, be an opportunity to actually do some research with other institutions as well. So that's what we're looking towards. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. We're there. We're done.
Yeah, thank you, Anne.